Hello everyone and welcome to another GTA content creator video where we've got, as you probably would have expected they would feature at some point, the variations of R.O.N Raceway. Those are the National Circuit, the Club Circuit, the Indy Circuit and the High Speed Ring. So we're going to be starting with R.O.N Raceway National Circuit. Now I'll read out the description for each of these as I start off. R.O.N Raceway's National Circuit is arguably the most interesting of all the track variations. Containing the entire northern section of the main circuit, this track starts in familiar territory before moving swiftly to what would normally be the final sector of the lap. Including the iconic bus stop chicane as one of its first sections, in addition to the tricky final corner, makes the National Circuit a popular choice for a lot of serious race meetings. So that is the description for this one, and just to give a bit of background about what I do with all my tracks, when I make a main racing circuit like I've done with Blaine County 24 Hours, Olympic Grand Prix, the North Loop, Los Santos Grand Prix, there are always variations of that take different parts of the track. So as you can see here, the National Circuit is the entire northern part of the track, and it basically contains the final section of the lap, and you miss out all of the rest. So you know I've always done the same sort of thing. Los Santos Grand Prix was the thing that started it. I had the inner loop and the outer loop, and then that went on for the upper loop, the lower loop, and then the kart track, the drag strip and all that kind of stuff. And then I continued that. I did the North Loop, the east and the west sections. The Olympic Grand Prix had east and west sections with short and long sections, and Blaine County 24 Hours is kind of where R.O.N Raceway's variations get the most, take the most inspiration from, because for Blaine County 24 Hours there was the north section, there was the southern section, there was the short section, and if you put all three of those together you would get a full lap. And then you also had the long variation of the track, which cut out all of the tricky bits, and it was very high speed. Now that's basically what I've done with R.O.N Raceway. So we've got the National Circuit, the Club Circuit and the Indy Circuit. If you put all three of those tracks together, you will basically get a full lap of R.O.N Raceway. So I've basically split R.O.N Raceway into three sections, and those are the sections that make up the variations. And then you've also got, right at the end, the High Speed Ring, which takes out all of the tricky corners, and it's very, very fast. It's a very, very fast lap around the outside, but we will get to all of that. So this is the National Circuit. This is actually longer than the Club Circuit and the Indy Circuit. This is the longest of the sort of three sections of the circuit that I've split it into, at nearly 1.5 miles. But it's very high speed, as you can see. So although it is longer than the Club Circuit, it actually is, the lap is over quicker. Certainly in supercars anyway, just under a minute for a lap here. I would imagine that some of the slower cars, you might find that the National Circuit could end up getting longer lap times than the Club Circuit. But yeah, I would say it's one of the most interesting parts of the track. It's got some really iconic sections like the bus stop chicane and the final chicane as well. The final turn as well is quite interesting. So it should make for some interesting racing, and it's quite high speed. And I would say it will probably end up being sort of the default variation that people will choose. It's kind of like the inner loop for LSGP. So now we'll move on to the Club Circuit. Again, I'll read out the description. R.O.N Raceway's Club Circuit is probably the most versatile of all the track variations. Composed of the middle section of the main circuit, this track includes the main start-finish straight, pit lane, tricky final corner, and the horseshoe section at the start of the lap. With it being much shorter than the full circuit, you're never too far from safety, and the Club Circuit is often considered the perfect choice for local club race meetings. So the Club Circuit is, as that description mentioned, the middle section of this track. So you start in exactly the same place as the main track, as you can see here. You've got the pit lane, you've got the final corner as well, and you basically start the lap in exactly the same way that you do the regular R.O.N Raceway, the full circuit. You come around the first corner, you do the horseshoe section as you're seeing here, and then the difference between this and the normal track is that when you come around this section, you have a hard right hand turn here, where normally you would just go straight through and go to the southern section of the circuit. So It's basically cutting out the southern section of the circuit, it's cutting out the northern section of the circuit, and it comes in at about 1.3 miles, so it is slightly shorter than the national circuit, but because it's a lot of sort of technical corners, a lot of hairpins, it takes a little bit longer by, say, 3 or 4 seconds in a supercar. This is sort of just under a minute, whereas for a lap time, where sort of 59 seconds, whereas the national circuit was something like 56. So they are very close, and although, as I said, although the national circuit is slightly longer, the club circuit does have a longer lap time, just because the corners are a much slower speed. It should provide some really interesting racing, this one, I think, because there are plenty of overtaking opportunities. You've got a lot of hairpins where you can get overtakes done, a lot of corners as well in general, where if people make a mistake you can get a run on them. So it should be interesting. It should provide a lot of overtaking, I think, this track. And yeah, with it being sort of slower speed, it gives you a little bit more chance to get those overtakes done and possibly have some good racing as well. And I do quite like the final turn to come back. Obviously normally you would go straight on at this section. Instead I've put this hairpin in and it comes back to this the second to last corner. I quite like the way that works. It seems to flow quite nicely, and you can probably take a few different lines into that to give you a nice run going down to the final corner. So that is the club circuit, and the names for this, normally I've been pretty boring with the names of my variations: inner loop, outer loop, east and west, long and short. They're all pretty simple. The reason that I've gone for, the names of these variations is because R.O.N Raceway has been likened somewhat to Silverstone, obviously the real track, and I decided to sort of play into that a little bit and try to act as if it's a proper racing circuit, as I try to do with all of my tracks really. But in terms of the way it's named, regular racing circuits do have proper names for their variations. So we've got the national circuit, which is the longer of the 3 variations that make up the actual track. The club circuit, which it's very close together, so you would consider it to be ideal for club meetings, a little bit slower speeds, for amateurs to race on, sort of thing. And then we've got the Indy circuit, which we'll be seeing next, which is very, very short, and I get that sort of inspiration from Brands Hatch's Indy circuit. So here we are with R.O.N Raceway Indy circuit again. I will read out the description for this. R.O.N Raceway's Indy circuit has the distinction of being the shortest of all the track variations. Located in the southernmost section of the main circuit, this track is somewhat disconnected to the central pit area and therefore has a separate start line and no pit lane. However, it does contain one of the most iconic sections of the track with the Silverstone-esque chicane complex. The Indy circuit is for quick thrills, and action-packed racing is almost guaranteed. So not only is the Indy circuit the shortest of all the track variations for R.O.N Raceway, it's actually the shortest track that I've ever made, apart from LSGP drag strip, which doesn't really count. So this is over very, very quickly, as you'll see throughout the course of this video. Even just a little random showcase like this, I'm getting it under 40 seconds for a lap in a supercar. So as I mentioned, it is just the southern part of the circuit. Not a lot, not a lot that needs to be said about that. It's very simple. But because of the way that the national circuit and the club circuit were made, this is kind of what was left, and it's very, very short, very, very action packed. I can imagine this being really, really interesting to race with compacts possibly as well. But even in the faster cars, you're going to get a lot of action, and if you do a longer race in this, you're going to be having to lap people. It's going to give you a very different experience to the regular R.O.N Raceway or most of my main circuits, where there's actually a reasonable amount of space. So yeah, this is the shortest track that I've ever really made for proper racing, if you like, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm really excited about actually having a race on it, because it's not usual for us to be racing on tracks that are this short. So it will just give that little bit of extra additional thing to do in GTA when it comes to racing. And as you can see, it's quite a simple track. It contains my favorite part of the entire circuit, which is these Silverstone style chicanes, as you can see here. So although it is the shortest, although it's just kind of, you know, the last little bit of the circuit that was left over. I actually really like it, and it's kind of, you know, the Indy circuit it has a lot of character to it, I would say. So I'm looking forward to doing some racing on this, even with a lot of people. I know it could be carnage, but it should be quite interesting just to do something a little bit different. And the whole idea with the Indy circuit is that it's kind of the smaller circuit that, you know, you might, if it was a real racing circuit, you might have sort of people learning on. It's kind of very similar to Stowe Circuit at Silverstone, if anyone is aware of what that is. So that's my take on the three sort of main circuits that make up the main variations that make up the main circuit. And now we have the high speed ring. So again, here with the description for this, R.O.N Raceway's high speed ring is easily the longest of all the track variations. It runs a large loop around the outside of the main circuit and skips past all the more complex sections of corners, meaning you're likely to be at full throttle for around 95% of the lap. Also containing the iconic bus stop and Silverstone-esque chicanes, the high-speed ring requires you to be as brave as possible in whatever vehicle you're driving to get the best lap time. Now again, anybody who knows the variations of Blaine County 24 Hours will recognise this whole idea of having splitting up the main circuit into three smaller circuits and then sticking at the end of it a high-speed ring right to give you those thrills, if you like, of high speed. And I know in the description I've wrote that you're on full throttle for 95% of the lap, but frankly you're probably going to be on full throttle for about 99% of the lap. When I tested this, you know, I'm on, from this point here, I'm on full throttle all the way up until the back chicane at the northern section of the track. It's all about top speed. The adder might even do well here in a supercar race, but it's just, again, a different aspect to it, something completely different. I can imagine this being a lot of fun with a lot of people as well, because there's not a lot to separate between people, and it's going to come very, you know, it comes down to how well you do the very few corners that can actually have an impact, and the kind of speed that you can carry all the way through the track. So it should be very interesting, and it will produce some very, very close racing, I imagine, just because it's so high speed, and it's quite a simple circuit. So at the moment all of these are available on PS4, that's where I've created them on, but I imagine that the creators of the original circuits will recreate these if they have the time, obviously, on their respective platforms. The link to all of my tracks is in the description. It should be in the second line of the description. Click that and you'll be able to see if it's available on your console. The same goes for all of my tracks. Most of my tracks are available on all consoles now, but click that link and you keep going back to that link as well, just to keep updated on whether this will be available on your platform. It shouldn't be too long, and I would imagine that you know, most people will be willing to recreate these if they've got the time. So yeah, these have been the variations of R.O.N Raceway. I imagine that people would have expected that these would happen, because it's just something that I'm known for doing, and I love making variations and, you know, acting as if my racetracks are real life racetracks as well, and you know, having these names of National, Club and Indy. I think those are the best names that I've ever really had, and the best sort of the best variations that I've made to a circuit, regardless of whether you like R.O.N Raceway or not. I know it's very much a love or hate circuit. I'm really happy with the variations that I've got with this, and the high speed ring in particular, as you can see, is pretty much full throttle all the way along. You know, there's very little braking or even lifting off of the throttle. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to give all of these a go. I'm certainly going to be playing them all on stream very shortly, but those are the 4 variations of R.O.N Raceway. Again, click the link in the description and you'll be able to download these and all of my circuits as well to your whatever platform that you're on. As I mentioned, they're all pretty much available on all platforms, all of my tracks. So thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Let me know all your thoughts down below about what you think about these variations. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.